Okay, what I want to do is I want to create a multiplication table. And what we're going to do here, so what I mean by a multiplication table is I want some columns that have the numbers I'm going to be multiplying. I'm going to do this all the way up to 10. And then I'm going to have the rows I'm going to be multiplying. And I'm going to have this all the way up to 10. And then inside, I'm going to have what happens when you multiply this column by this row. And so on and so on. We'll fill in the table. And what we can do is we can make a loop that goes through each row. And it'll work its way through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for every iteration of that loop, for each row, it's going to want to have another loop that does the columns. And so we want to put this all together in two loops. So I'll set one loop for my integer row equals 0, and it will go up to 10. And then inside of that, I'll have a for loop for some integer column equals 0, which will go up to 10. And so we'll do this in Eclipse, so it's a little bit neater. But every time this loop executes, it'll come back up, it'll do a series of these. These will finish. It'll come back, move the next number here. And so this is called nested loops. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do that inside of Eclipse here. So let me get my Eclipse over here. And what we're going to do in Eclipse is I'll make a new class. Again, you won't see the way the window gets captured. You won't see the coming up, but I'm going to call this mult table, M-U-L-T table, so we can make the multiplication table. So let's get this created here. I'll go to File, New Class, and I'll call it mult table. See if I have my proper glasses on, I can see mult table. What am I missing? File, new class. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to show in my Eclipse here. Class, name, mult table. It's not creating it in the right thing. There we go. That wasn't right-clicking on Chapter 5 project. There we go. So we're going to have a multiplication table. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the output first. So I'm going to create my two loops. I'm going to have for integer row equals 0. And as long as row is less than or equal to 10, this loop will run. And I'll increase row by 1 each time through. But inside of this loop, I'm going to have column equals 0. And as long as column is less than or equal to 10, this inner loop will run. And I'll increase column by 1. And so what I want to print out, I'm going to use a printf for this, is I'm going to print a pipe to separate my entries. And then I'm going to I'm going to hold 3 pipe space and 3 places for the integer. So I'm going to use my printf to hold 3 places for the integer. Oh, did I get my pipe in here? So I'm going to have a pipe to separate things. That's why there's a pipe in the beginning. And then I want to print row times column. So I'm having my printf do this. So my row will come through. Then I'll do each column, which will print row times column. Once a row is done, so I work all my way through these, I'll need to just print a new line. So to print a new line, I'll just run a print line like this. I want to test this to see if my output looks half decent. And so I have a multiplication table. A couple things aren't happening here that I'm going to pretty up now. So I don't have my rows or my column headers. I just have the answers, and I don't have a pipe on the end here. So I think first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pipe on the end here. And so if I run that, that's nice. I have my multiplication table. So what I want to do is I want to have something in the beginning that tells me which row I'm at. So that's going to be in the row part here. When I come into this row, I want to talk about my row. And I'm going to use a percent. I'm going to use a 3 wide integer again. But I'm just going to list my row. And I think that should give me rows out front here. And so there I have my rows. And so these nice nested loops print my row information and the result of multiplying my row by my column. So the thing I need to do before I start this now is print my columns. So before I get into my nested loops, I'm gonna make a comment here. Nested loop displaying results of multiplication table. Up above it, I want to print my column headers, because the column headers aren't really part of my main loop. And so let's see, I made my row information 3 wide, so I will print 3 spaces. And then I'll make a small loop to print my column headers. So integer column equals 0, as long as my column is less than or equal to 10, and column will increase by 1. Again, I'll use my printf to make it fit. And so what did I do? If I looked at my printfs down here, I had pipe space, so space, percent 3d. So an integer that's 3 wide. And all I want to print out is my column. So I'll run this. Oh, what did I forget? I forgot a new line at the end. So I'll system.out.print line. All right, the problem with printfs is they don't do new lines, so I need to enter my new lines. And so here I have my column information and my row information. And so if I want to find 8 times 6, I'll come down to 8 and over to 6, and I have a multiplication table. And so nesting loops is a good way of doing repetitive information. And I actually like thinking of nested loops in a row column mentality, because the rows that we have created, then I iterate and do each column. So it's not a bad display. And notice how printf helped clean up our display. I think one thing I could do in here is I could probably print, since all of these have the same width, I could probably print a line underneath it. But for right now, this is a good working program that nests loops to build a multiplication table. And we really exploited printf to make sure everything lined up neatly in here by making sure that our largest number would only be 3 wide.